I was trying to convert a Muslim to Christianity. I was a Christian at that time. And I thought after 3 months of working with him, and he lived in our house, I thought I was going to get him, but I didn't. And then I got another opportunity. A priest was getting kicked out of the hospital. He had a heart attack. So this priest was riding with me, and I was taking him out to my house, in my dad's house. I thought maybe we could get him to Christianity through the Catholic Church. Well, I was desperate after 3 months. But the priest told me, I know all about Islam. I said, huh? He said, we have to study it as priests to understand the world's religions. And I know about the 5 daily prayers. I know about the fasting of Ramadan and the Hajj and all of the rest of it. I said, oh man, yeah, we got this guy. So we got out there to my dad's place. The first thing that the priest asked for, he said he wanted to go to the Muslim church. Yeah, masjid. Anyway, and the Muslim took him. And I said, when he got back, I said, yeah, well, took him aside. I said, what did they do in there? You know, do they slaughter animals or make bombs? And he surprised me. He said, no, it was the most fulfilling thing that I ever saw. I said, huh? He said they stood like monks in a line, and they didn't speak to anyone. And then they bowed, and then they made prostration. It was beautiful. And this is the priest saying that. And I thought, huh? A few weeks later, maybe the next week, I don't know, but he asked to go back to the masjid. And I said, yeah, that's good. He's going to get a lot of them. And they didn't come back, and they didn't come back, and they didn't come back. And it was night. It was 10 o'clock at night. And I said, oh, what's going on? And then I saw the car coming up. Ah, yeah. And the Muslim got out. And then somebody got out on the other side wearing a pillbox cap and a white thobe. And I said, huh? The priest. And I said, did you become a Muslim? He said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu Muhammad Rasulullah. Means that I bear witness that there is no God but the real God. And Muhammad is his last prophet. And I said, huh? And I was thinking about this, 3 months of watching somebody perfect in my book. This guy never made any mistakes, like sins. He even chased after a lady to give her back her change that she left on the counter. It was just 11 cents or 15 cents or something like that. He chased her all the way in the parking lot. And he was coming back, and he had a heat stroke. And he spent $1 on a cap. It was a flea market. He spent $1 on a cap to get back. And I said, where were you? He said, I was chasing that lady to give her change back. And I asked him, what did she say? She said, well, you didn't need to do that. And I said, you lost $1 to give her 15 cents. He said, this is my religion. I said, huh? Islam covers everything you do in your life. Because in the Quran, which means recitation, by the way, in the Quran, it will tell you the purpose of your life. And it says, I only created the mankind and jinn to worship me. That's all. The only reason we are created by Almighty God is to worship Him. And do whatever you want to do in the daytime, but worship Him alone and follow His commandments. I happened to think about this, and when the priest became a Muslim, that shook me up. And I went to my wife, and I was telling her, she lived along with that. The Muslim was in our house for 3 months, praying and doing the things that Muslims do. Being nice, kind, and everything. So I went up to her and I said, what do you think about the priest becoming a Muslim? All of a sudden, she says, I want a divorce. And I said, huh? Where is that coming from? And she said, I don't want to be married to you anymore. And I said, whoa, because that morning we had beautiful relations. What, after 7 years and a half, happened? She said, I want a divorce. And I said, whoa, I'm not going to be a Muslim. I promise I never will be a Muslim. I was just asking you about the priest. Besides, anyway, if a man is a non-Muslim, a Muslim lady shouldn't be married to him. But, she said, that's what I'm talking about. I want to be a Muslim. I said, huh? Whoa. I said, well, the good news is, I'm with you. Yeah. She said, no, you're a liar. Muslims don't lie. I said, huh? Whoa, I'm not lying. I really want to be a Muslim. She said, you were either lying 5 minutes ago when you said you weren't going to be, or you're lying now. In any case, get out. And I was halfway down the stairs when I realized I just got kicked out of my own father's house. But anyway, we worked it out. But it was not easy. A lot of times when people come to Islam, they think that I'm going to be a Muslim and everything is going to straighten out. That's not the case. In most cases, it gets harder. It gets harder. And you're being tested. Almighty Allah is testing all of us all the time.